A lot of you are always talking about wanting a box camera. You can actually make one yourself, and I'm gonna show you how. But before we get started, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and consider joining the channel. Channel members get exclusive access to Filmmaker Alchemy, behind the scenes lessons and insights on the business of video production. Learn how to turn your content into gold. We're gonna take a look at Metamorphosis3D.com. Of course, I got an Instagram ad and I thought these actually looked kind of cool. It's an Exocage for your Lumix S5 Mark II. And you can read all about it over on Metamorphosis3D.com, but I thought I would point it out just as a cool example of one of the many types of boxy cages that are out these days. Cineback is another style of cage, and these, I can't speak to these personally yet. I did order one. I'm going to test it out and see the quality, but more conceptually, if you want a box camera, if you want a cinema rig, if you want to look like you're shooting with a red camera or, anything like that, you can easily transform almost any camera these days into a more boxy design if you prefer. Now, are there some intrinsic benefits to having a camera being designed as a box? Yeah, there are. But also, as long as the camera itself is good, like the S5 Mark II already is, you can boxify it to your heart's desire. And there's some additional accessories over here you can buy. This is important and it's not. The important part, I think, of a box cinema camera is to kind of put on the show. If you're working with clients, you're working with somebody who wants to feel like they're getting their value and they don't necessarily trust a hybrid, you can easily throw a box on it and make it look more like a red camera. In fact, I think this looks a lot like a red camera, and honestly, your regular normal person on the street or whoever you're working with isn't going to be able to tell the difference. Even when you say, I'm shooting with a Lumix, they're never going to have heard of it, and we've talked about that at length at this point in time. The not so important side of this equation is that I personally prefer the hybrid smaller style anyway, because it's smaller and lighter weight and easier to go. You don't have to rig it out. Like if you build a box like this, it takes up more space. Now, how are you going to travel with it? Okay, you need a bigger case, more accessories, more stuff to deal with. It does serve a place and a purpose if you want to slow things down, rig things out, build them up bigger for a client. Absolutely, that's a good use of the box design. But I also think there's a lot to the box mentality that is just the aesthetics of that looks cool, so I want to look cool in my behind the scenes photos or videos, so I need to shoot like that. Because we see that often mirrored on social media or on YouTube. You'll see someone filming with a camera that looks cool, and that alone, that aesthetic is often enough to tempt people into, well, I need to shoot like that, regardless of how it actually affects the quality of their footage, their workflow, the on-set practices that you're going to have. So if you think this looks cool, go check it out over at Metamorphosis3D. They're not paying for me to say this or anything like this. I just thought it was genuinely kind of a cool design and a neat look if you want to rig out your S5 Mark II or your S5 Mark II X for that matter. Both would work with this cage. And it's kind of neat, kind of cool designed. Again, I haven't actually held one in my hands. I ordered one so I can test it out and see if this is something I even like. Maybe it's a terrible product. Very well could be, but the design is more or less what I'm focused on. That concept of you can take an S5 and transform it into a box if you so desire. You can do it with A7S Mark III. You can do it with an A7 IV. You can do it with really whatever you want. There's plenty of cages and styles of ways to rig out your camera to be more boxy if you prefer. And I honestly prefer that because then I can add it or take it away as I want, as I desire, versus buying a box camera, which we've also talked about this before, that a lot of the box versions that Lumix has made just haven't sold as well because they're less popular. They're more of a niche product. If you are investing in a box, you have a very particular set of needs for that. But there's a lot more of us out there who just want the photography hybrid style body, and those sell more. And so the profit incentive is always there to cater to the bigger demographic, right? iPhones sell the most because there's more people who want an iPhone compared to any type of photography or cinema camera, I think there's more iPhones sold than all other cameras combined. It's some crazy stat like that. I don't know if that's exactly true, but it's something like that. Apple just makes an absurd amount of money on their iPhone sales because basically everyone can benefit from an iPhone, and they make more money and they sell more products, versus cameras that are, a little bit more specific, sell less. And then you go to the box variants and it's even smaller than that. So if you want to boxify, for you boxaholics, you can definitely do it with cameras that are already available off the shelf. You don't have to like hope and wish and pray that Lumix or Sony or anyone else makes one for you. You can kind of make it yourself. And I get that, yes, theoretically, the box version, if they were to truly make it, if Lumix or whoever else made the box camera, would have benefits like internal NDs or something like that, of course you're not getting with this type of cage. It's just a exoskeleton. That's what they call an Exocage. So I do understand that if a box was actually custom designed at the factory from the company, it probably would come with a few more bells and whistles. But in the meantime, if you really want to trick your kid out to look cool and look like you're shooting on red, which I don't even know, is that cool anymore? I don't know. Everyone's shooting on their phone these days. Everyone's shooting vertical. Is a red still cool? I think it's probably cool for us. Maybe you can scoop up an old red camera. I think there's like Scarlett's available for like a couple $1,000s if you really want to shoot on red. And that was like the greatest camera at the time. Yes, Scarlett was secondary to the Epic. But you can even find old Epics for pretty cheap nowadays. You're losing all the latest and greatest in terms of autofocus and the new features we have now. But if you want to shoot with like the best camera of the time, you can go find them on the used market. Same with Arri or any high-end Hollywood cinema camera. If there was something you had your eyes on years and years ago, you can go find them pretty affordably nowadays if you look, on eBay or wherever else it might be. Maybe Facebook Marketplace, someone's selling something locally. And I think that's also interesting that what was so lusted after, people were drooling over having like I wanted Red Dragon, or I need the Helium or the Gemini, or I need, X, Y, or Z. Now, much more affordable. And maybe that tells you something for the future. The thing you're lusting after now that's super expensive, one day will just be someone's used hardware sitting on eBay for, $1,000 or $2,000, a couple $100, whoever knows what it is. So if you want it just to want it, you recognize that about yourself and maybe solve the problem with a box design like this. Grab a cage for a couple $100, scratch the itch, get it out of your system, versus wanting to drop thousands of dollars on a box variant that ultimately, you won't want, no one else will want, and it'll just be sitting on the used market. Now, if you need it, that's a different story. I'm talking about what you want versus what you need. If you need it for your work, then obviously buy it, use it, solve the problem you have. There's just that weird in-between space where there's a lot of people who want something because it looks cool and they like the idea of it, and they think that like, well, if I get the right thing, then one day I'll get the clients or I'll get the projects. No. Buy the thing you need that solves a problem you have that you actually need, not just buying the stuff you want because it looks cool. I'll let you know how this Metamorphosis3D.com Exocage works out for me on the S5 Mark II. I do think it looks cool. I'm glad it's available as an option. There are other ones out there, though. Like I said, you can check on Amazon or wherever else you might buy stuff from. Adorama. I'm not really sure where people are buying their B&H. I don't know. I always have problems with shopping on B&H. Stuff's like back ordered, or it's hard to cancel, or they're closed half the time. I don't know where you buy your stuff. Let me know in the comments. I would be curious to see what people prefer. I think Amazon kind of just like the delivery times, it just is like where everyone's shopping these days. But I don't know, maybe you have a local camera retailer in your area. Let me know in the comments. And let me know if you would even consider something like this, an Exocage for your camera, or if you prefer, like I do, to just shoot, pretty stripped down. I do have a cage and a rig and some basic odds and ends to add a little bit of functionality, but the box, I don't know, but I got to test it out. So I'm going to do it.